Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host as always, Steve Hall, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by someone I've had the privilege of following for over a decade, as we both connected through our love and passion of natural bodybuilding, AJ Morris. Since those early days, AJ has not only built an incredibly successful competitive career, but also an impressive coaching business, helping some of the best natural athletes in the world reach their full potential. With over 10 years of experience as both a high-level competitor and coach, AJ has developed a wealth of knowledge and wisdom that truly sets him apart. What makes AJ stand out is his passion for natural bodybuilding. It's contagious, and you'll hear that in everything he does, from training to coaching to sharing his story. Today, we'll dive into his unique training philosophy, how he approaches working with hardworking athletes, and why he believes it's not just about chasing shredded glutes to do well on the bodybuilding stage. We'll also touch on his competition prep plans for next year and the exciting MBW International Bodybuilding Show and the lessons he's learned throughout his journey. And guys, as a reminder, at Revive Stronger, we are an online coaching business as well. I have been in the game officially for over 10 years now, coaching people, whether or not that be to the bodybuilding stage, to a photo shoot, just getting leaner, happier, healthier. And we really keep our service personal through our video check-ins and making sure that communication is on point, so you never feel lost in the woods, especially when you're trying to diet and your brain goes a bit funky and you have some questions. It's always nice to have someone in your corner you can reach out to, trust, and communicate well with. So if you're interested in some very personalized online coaching, then you can always check that out, linked in the description, and you can book a consultation with myself or one of the coaches on the team, and we'd love to help you. But whether you're a natural bodybuilding enthusiast or just curious about what it takes to succeed in this sport, you're going to take a lot away from this conversation. So without further ado, let's get into the chat with AJ Morris. So AJ, the first question I have for you is, if you were to summarize your philosophy for bodybuilding hypertrophy style training, how would you summarize it?
Oh, wow. That's a great question.
Straight in the deep end.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first and foremost, I know that obviously the intro kind of comes before these questions, but I do just want to say thank you very much for having me back on, mate. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your audience as well that you've built up over a long period of time. So I'm really looking forward to chatting. As for the question, so yeah, I mean, it's a deep question. I think my philosophy is really deep rooted in work ethic. It really is. I think that's something that I've always seen the merit of in bodybuilding. And I think even more so now that I've had such incredible opportunities over the last, 10 years of coaching, really, to work with several different athletes, is that the ones that really do excel and the ones that really do get to their goals are the ones that have that deep embedded work ethic, the ones that really are willing to strive to do anything towards their goals. So, and that's something that I believe that even if you don't have it initially, you can develop it. And that's really where I guess a lot of my philosophy goes as a coach, is that if I can, in the first month of coaching someone, embed habits, routines, even just a mindset that allows them to access more work ethic than they had before, regardless of how optimal the program is or how good the diet is or whatever I've given them on paper, the actionable outcomes of those things that they're doing is going to be so much greater. So that's what I really dive into as a coach, is the work ethic and how tough people are mentally as well. Because in bodybuilding, I mean, yourself, you're a week out now from one of the biggest shows in natural bodybuilding, and it takes something else to get to that level in a prep and be able to push through those boundaries that some other people just can't push through.
I really like that answer of work ethic. And of course, by the way, having you back on, like I said off air, been meaning to have you back on for a while. I've seen the work you've been doing, not just for yourself as an individual and the kind of company you've built and the athletes you've been working with and the amount of experience that you've gained. And so I thought, hey, this is someone I got to bring on. And it just took me this long to kind of get you back on. And yeah, that answer in terms of work ethic, I think sings true to, if people follow you on social media, they'll see that. And it's something I've come back to, is it sounds really basic on paper. So work ethic sounds basic on paper. Like people are like, yeah, I work hard. And I think about like training for bodybuilding is like training as hard as you can, as often as you can, for as long as you can. And there's so many ways or methods and like art forms to that. But that's essentially what it is. Do you ever find with people who, and you clearly have this ability to push, they struggle to pull back? Like there's that fine line of, especially within like a contest prep, it's like where I'm redlining now, like it's like you're on a tightrope and you can push yourself, you can focus too much on the doing and the pushing hard, and like you have to balance that with the pull back. How do you kind of manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that a lot in the kind of the character traits that I coach, because a lot of people, I'm not actually having to get the work ethic out of them. I'm actually having to balance the work ethic with what needs to be done, because there's often a big difference between needs and wants, you know, especially in the scenario of a contest prep. Is that so? An example being the need is presenting the best bodybuilder on stage, right? But the want of the athlete is, I want to have glutes that wrap into my trunks. You know, I want to have hamstrings that the judges are vomiting at when I place the back. You know what I mean? It's like you want to have all of these things that are maybe like the best attributes of some other athletes that you look up to. But the job of a coach is to present ideally the best look. And, you know, that's a hard line to sometimes follow with also the feedback that you give clients, because if you're 6 weeks out from a show and you're already knowing that this athlete is closing in on where they're going to be their absolute best, and they've got 6 more weeks until they've got a show that they've paid up for, travel, accommodation, everything, it's a hard one to say, like, land them with the answer of we're done pushing, because then they're like waking up every day and sending the same shots and getting a similar response, because that's you protecting their look, right? And sometimes it's a balancing act of saying, okay, like, look, we're gonna try. We've maybe presented good looks already across the course of the season. We're gonna try. A great example of this is one of my clients at the moment, Ron. He presented great looks across the course of the season. I knew that we were very close on the rate limiter of his absolute best in terms of conditioning for his muscularity. And I said, look, you know, I'm happy to push a little further for the world, but I want this to be an opportunity for us to see how far we can go when it tips over the edge and what that then looks like for you. And then I was like, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to send you comparisons of what that looks like, so you can see also for yourself what you look like fuller, a bit softer, and then harder with maybe a little bit less overall pop and freshness to your look. Which do you prefer? The athlete's mindset is probably always going to be in the prep of preferring the harder look. And then you'll look at them again in the off season and be like, you know, maybe AJ was right. Maybe the softer look was a little bit better for the earlier shows. So yeah, in those moments, it's just being selective with a coach, just what you say and how you say it. I think this is something that, definitely over the last 4 to 5 years, I've become a lot more confident in saying the right things, and piecing them together in a balance of honesty and empathy towards how they're feeling in that moment, because that's where, you know, it really seals the deal of keeping them on board with the plan, and also keeps them motivated and excited for the process. So yeah, and then, you know, contrary to that, in the off season, it's like people often think that more is better in every shape or form, whether that's more frequency for a body part. It's the typical, I mean, I've been there and done it, mate. You've probably been there and done it as well. You get out of a contest prep or a diet and you're like, right, you know, let's do this different. Let's try this. Let's, you know, put this exercise in, or I need to do this to get X. And the reality is, a lot of the time, yes, some strategic changes might be needed, but more of the same is probably what's going to take you towards a lot more progress. And that's where keeping an athlete on the straight and narrow, not getting them down this path of thinking that suddenly loads of things need to change as a byproduct of flicking into another phase, is also important too. So yeah, setting a rate limiter on the athlete is something that I do quite often. And I really believe that, yeah, the message there for any coaches listening is, think about how you're piecing together what you're trying to get out of the athlete at that point, whether it's any end of the extremity, the tone of voice and the presentation of what you say is so important to keep the athlete focused and driven towards the goal.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. I often say, like, the role of a coach, or at least the role I often play, is saving the client from themselves, especially for those highly motivated ones. I definitely get the ones where I'm like, you can push harder, we need to push harder, like, and build up their confidence to do that. But then there's other people where it's like, hey, let's pull back. And I've definitely learned the hard way in terms of getting clients maybe ready, like, a bit sooner than we ideally wanted to, and then it's a case of like, can we move around shows, and then I just learned I needed more frequent looks on their physique versus like what I thought at that time. But something that I'm going to be a bit selfish here, because I'm in this sort of situation where we tried something and it didn't necessarily pay off in my prep in the way that we hoped. Because Ron is a great example, because I know exactly who he is, because I judged him at the WMBF, and I would agree with you. When I saw him there, I thought he's got like good muscle, good symmetry, but he wasn't the most conditioned on stage. He would have more to give there from my like just judging, seeing him there. Yes, but it's very interesting hearing your insight as his coach, being like, but we could push for that, but I don't think it's going to have the payoff that we would like it to. So I think a lot of people just see as physiques on stage, it's like, well, if they've got more body fat to lose, just lose that body fat. But there is that balancing act. And for me, recently, it's been a case of, hey, we don't have those. I want those glutes, like Dirk glutes. Let's put Dirk. I always bring up Dirk as an example, or the Brett Freemans, the Ben Howards, you know them. So it's like, I've never had that. Can I get that? And I know in 2021, I pushed at the end to see if I could get that condition. They never came through to that extent. And with Cliff, right now, we had a great look at the Netherlands, and that's where I ended up getting my pro card. And then we were harder for the Swiss show, but it was against like some mass monsters in that class and things. So there was kind of that. But it's that fine line of we've been pushing for that extra condition, but because you're also getting flatter, it's like, and you're fatigued, the look can actually get worse. And you're kind of like, is a peak week going to bring this physique to life to where it was once when we had a bit more body fat? And I think this is where your level of experience that you've got now is really paying off, where you can see that in some clients. I don't know if my discussion there brings around any thoughts, but something Cliff recently said to me was like, I think we've met your kind of cap for we met your cap for condition maybe a few weeks ago, and we've just pushed into an area where we're not going to liberate more body fat, and we're just getting smaller.
Yeah. No, I remember that with your physique, even in 21 as well. I remember us having a conversation about how you looked at the Midlands BMBF show, and how like I'd seen you there really round, really full, really fresh, perhaps not as hard as I'd seen you previous times, but because of that pop and roundness, it actually made you look really, really good in some aspects, you know, especially from a structural standpoint. And that's something to consider with a lot of physiques, is that as you dig for more condition, does the lack of pop and roundness to the muscle hurt the structure, and then relay some of the structural issues that people have in their physiques? So with Ron, it's kind of almost like a bit of an opposite situation compared to a physique perhaps like yours, where Ron has got good structure, very wide shoulders, super narrow waist, but he's not got the maturity, you know, and a physique like yours has got a lot of maturity, a lot of density. So I can get why you wanted to see whether you could get that Dirk level separation through the glutes. With Ron, it's like, I knew from the moment I got him that it was going to be a case of getting his glutes boxed off, you know, like, so they have the shape. But I knew just looking at the glutes, it's like, they're not 3D enough to get the dugout lines without just compromising so much of what everything else is to his physique, you know, the thickness to his back, the cap to his delts, you know, all of these strong points that make him look the way that he does and stand out on stage. So, but then, you know, maybe another great example for this kind of scenario is someone like Ben Lloyd, where Ben Lloyd is at a level of muscularity where, you know, his show day peaks were like the finest of details to get the look nailed. So for some of the shows earlier in the season, I started to notice this like kind of throughout the day spill that would have him really sharp in the morning, glutes all the way dug out to like I use these terms with Ben, like mid to top glutes. And then I saw throughout the day that his mid to top glute started to get waterier to the stage. So then we tried some different things with fluid, with sodium, and also with actually just carbohydrates as well. So then for the Olympia, finally getting a look on stage where we had enough fullness to fill his crazy muscularity out and get good pumps backstage, but also have the entire glute from top to bottom presenting the detail that I wanted. And that's where I think, like coaches like Cliff are very fine detail orientated. And I think the level of muscularity, the level of condition you bring does therefore influence the level of fine details you go into, because the look can go like left or right in different spots of the day. And you have to be firmly on it as a coach to be able to identify what is the best look, whether it is a little flatter with more detail or there is a little fuller with less detail. And that's something, again, like if I didn't get the opportunity to work with athletes like Ben or even like Ron with these seriously good physiques, I wouldn't have the ability to build my arsenal of tools that I can throw at it. And I think especially over this year, my arsenal of tools has gotten so much broader and deeper because of the opportunities that have faced me and the challenges that I've then come across.
And I think it's worth the listeners, because they won't know unless they're following you or they go check out your Instagram. They won't know who Ron is. They won't know. They might know who Ben is, because Ben is a bit more well known, especially in the UK. But I think they're good comparisons, because Ben is he getting towards 40? I don't want to age him, but he's
old. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So he's loads of density, like massively muscular, whereas Ron is like early 20s, I believe.
Yes,
so
he's just outside of the juniors. So yeah.
So I think that's a great comparison of where you choose to push the physique, because I think this is a topic I didn't actually intend us to get to necessarily, but now there is that people see social media and they see the glutes and they just want to chase the glutes, and especially younger competitors who are on social media. And I imagine quite a lot of your audience are of like teens and juniors, and they're coming up. They've probably seen your journey and they want to kind of emulate that, because you were very, very competitive through that time, and where you've got to now is tremendous. And obviously as an online coach too, they probably look up to that. They want to kind of do that. But do you find that it's maybe, I guess the discussion has already taken care of itself. Sometimes people can focus on that too much and it can end up harming them. But even to the degree, do you think it can sometimes hurt someone's long-term success as a bodybuilder, where they get burnt by the process?
Definitely for sure. I think, the goal of some people's preps has been written in onboarding forms of, I want to get striated glutes. And it's like, do you want to be the best bodybuilder you can be, or do you want to just get one objective ticked off? And, I think that's where I'm very, very quick on that. And I'm like, look, this is not a striated glute contest. This is a bodybuilding show where you compete to present your best physique. And also at the same time, like, I've seen teens chase the striated glute look, and you've got to admit that the on-stage look as a result of chasing the striated glutes, and especially when you get beaten by a guy that's significantly bigger and has not got anywhere near striated glutes, then takes away quite a long time of their ability to add new tissue in their kind of prime years of growing, because you've got to argue that the physiological place you take yourself into as a very young athlete, purely chasing the objective of stage condition through the glutes and hamstrings, unless it comes to you relatively well and you've got the development there to support it and it brings your best look, probably not always worth going there, especially not just as a sole objective. The sole objective always should be gonna do my best, gonna bring my best, gonna listen to and trust the eyes of my coach if you've invested in one. And if you haven't got one, then invest in the opinions of people that have been there and done it several times, because that will also, like I said, protect you in the long run and have you making the most progress.
I think that's so well said. Yeah, again, it reminds me of something Cliff says is like people will fill out, are you willing to do what it takes? And that doesn't mean like just head down, pushing as hard as you possibly can. It means having to pull back and listen to objective like outsiders. And you're so right with chasing that condition and then being beat by a softer but more well-rounded bodybuilder, especially when you understand the judging criteria. A lot of people don't. They do just think it's a shredded glutes contest. So it's so important that you kind of mentioned that, hey, it's definitely not that. And then quite often they have to, like you said, take themselves to places that they're not ready to go to. And then unfortunately post-show often isn't that successful for them. And they kind of get burnt by the sport a little bit because they just haven't managed that period very well for themselves. So it's unfortunate. You mentioned kind of, and I think actually one of your clients, we were at a show and he had insane glutes. I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but he did very, very well. Yeah. I think you mentioned that they came relatively easily to him. Do you find that often the people with the craziest glutes, like again, a Dirk, I imagine like for a lot of them, like the degree of effort they have to get just slightly in glutes is like the amount of effort someone would have to do just to have them rounded out, if that makes sense. They just have that level of, I don't know, less body fat, more genetically able to liberate body fat there, and maybe just very well developed glutes. Do you find that sometimes happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think bottom line, you know, it definitely comes down to body fat distribution, probably more than anything else. Just because if you look at some people, I mean, even like Dirk, you know, Dirk's openly said, you know, his glutes are in and his lower back is holding body fat. You know, like I wish it was that way for me. My lower back feels like it's got nothing on it, and my glutes are still pretty fat. So it's like body fat distribution makes a huge difference, because you've also got to think of almost like if one area's got a lot, all the other areas are completely liberated of body fat, then all the other areas are taking a hit every time you try and stab away at the remaining body fat off that one body part. So if it's the glutes and your lower back and all of your back and your arms, your delts, everything's completely peeled, then you're having to go at either a snail's pace to get that done, and you just need a ridiculous amount of time, which often is the case with getting into elite condition anyway, is time's your greatest asset. Or you're not going to get them all the way in without compromising something from some other areas, which means that you just need to probably go away and build a lot more muscle so you can get everything into condition and not compromise one thing too much. But that's, again, you know, it's the judgment call of the coaching question to think, you know what, is it worth getting another one of these two things in versus ruining everything else? But yeah, like a Ben Howard is a great example. I mean, you know, he has to suffer to get the glutes in, but once they're in, they're so worth having, because the lines can be seen from like all the way back at the judges table easily. You know, whereas some other people that might not have genetically the hard, deep crevices in the glutes themselves, it might not even be worth pushing to that level, because you're not maybe even going to see the crevices on stage. You're just going to chase something that's not even apparent, you know? So, yeah, there's definitely a balancing act for sure there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I imagine you could like put a finger across Ben's glutes and you could feel like the ridges. Whereas like I'm doing that to myself now and I'm like, there's like lumps and like bumps, but there's not these like lines of just like hard coming across. And I'm like, maybe I just don't have, I don't have that like same anatomy and kind of muscle architecture that's like, you look at Benjamin Schuster's, again, his were like
super cross,
whereas Dirk's are more like just big thick lines and indents. So I think there could even be that element to it where people like they think they want their glutes to look a certain way, but they're just not going to get it. I kind of use the comparison like chest. Like some people's chest striations are like wild. I get pretty good chest striations. Some people, they could be completely shredded everywhere, but the chest just doesn't really get that striated look. And I think there is an element of, like you said, muscle maturity. So I might have to do some direct glute work for once. I put it all towards my bloody quads, because they're the thing that needed the biggest bringing up. But yeah, it's kind of similar to abs are a great example, right? So if you could be shredded, but if you don't have thick, well-developed abs, they're never going to show through. So you have to put some time and effort towards those. So yeah, I guess I don't know if you have any more on like that discussion, but it was a bit of a tangent from me. I have
No,
a
I
new
think the
path.
tangents. I think the tangent's good, but yeah, I think without repeating myself, I think we've covered the glute topic.
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the things I wanted to ask was kind of who have been your biggest influences and who continue to be kind of your biggest influences throughout? Because obviously, I've been following you. I mean, ever since for over a decade now, probably. And yeah, I've seen you evolve as a person, and I think you've really, over the last few years, really developed your own like methodologies and own experience and voice, which has been awesome to see. But I think it's good for people to know, like, where did you come up from?
Yeah, for sure. So I think for me, probably taking myself back to when I first got involved in bodybuilding as a whole, especially natural bodybuilding. First influences were probably 3DMJ, if I'm being honest. And I remember obviously going to the seminar when you brought them over, and remember having good conversations with Berto there and telling him my goals and my intentions. And it's good to always see him at Worlds and things like that and catch up. So, and it's still a bit of a weird moment when he even kind of knows who I am. I know that now, obviously, we're both in similar industry and similar sort of like, in the coaching field.
Colleague.
I feel like we're on a similar wavelength. And I foresaw that happening in the future. But it's still crazy to have those moments where you look back and you think, oh, I was just, and I still am a fanboy of these people that now I can have on the level conversations with. And I'm sure you've found many moments like that in your career as well. But yeah, 3DMJ were definitely a big influence on my ability to sort of understand a lot more about what it takes to be an athlete, and the basics of natural bodybuilding, and just having a scope on the landscape a little bit more, and just listening to people talk about natural bodybuilding, the industry, and develop my knowledge as a whole was that was huge. From there, I guess probably about 2015, 2014, probably more like 2015. Big influences of mine were Jordan Peters, as I started to kind of grasp a little bit more of his programming methodologies and his training methodologies. And he was probably my biggest influence on training programming, off-season structure, pushing up body weights. I took so much from him, and I couldn't be more grateful, to be honest, for Jordan's influence on the industry, because I genuinely believe without him, I honestly would not have the results that I have with my clients. Because if you look at one of my training programs and you look at the programs he was writing 15 or 10 years ago, they're probably relatively similar in a lot of the ways that we structure things. And Jordan obviously had people that influenced him and passed down knowledge. And of course, there's application in which there are some differences for natural athletes. But yeah, he was a huge influence. I went to a good couple of his in-person seminars and workshops as well, and asked him a lot of questions. I was lucky enough to train with him once as well and see his work ethic in person. And I think, a lot of the people that have kind of like branched off that for me. So obviously developing a close relationship with Cuba and being able to train with him, and being up here at Ultraflex, seeing his work in person, seeing his influence on his clients and his roster. Again, there are differences between the natural and assisted realm, but there is a lot of similarities. And he's been a massive influence on me, not just in terms of bodybuilding, but also, his business mind, and how he's wanted to progress on that front and how driven he is. And it's kind of quite infectious when you're around people like that, to be honest. I felt infected by the bug to be better. Whenever I've listened to Jordan speak, when I had him on my podcast when I was like 19, I was like, man, this guy's like just so driven and motivated. And if you surround yourself with people like that, it's inevitable that the good things will come. So yeah, I think that kind of 3DMJ, Jordan, Cuba kind of environment for me has been three major key players that have influenced my coaching and also my bodybuilding big time.
Yeah, I think I can see it with the way I haven't followed Jordan and Cuba as to the degree that you have, but I know of them and I've heard them speak and I've listened to them on podcasts, and I can see where you've kind of got it from in terms of that like passion for it, which I love, and it is infectious completely. I think it's really, really cool to see. And the pure like love for bodybuilding, like really deep entrenched love for bodybuilding, which is great. I think I'd be remiss not to ask, because you mentioned it a few times, differences between enhanced and naturals. Is there any that immediately come to mind? Because you said there's similarities, but I think people would be interested to hear how it might differ.
Sure. So I think for me, honestly, the pace of the pace of change. So what I mean by that is that in the off season, the trajectory in terms of body weight gain is very different. The trajectory in terms of the ability to create a fast rate of loss in a diet and support muscle retention with the properties and tools you can use is just the timelines are just very different. And I also think, don't get me wrong, I think a lot of things have changed, and you've probably seen this in the space too, where bodybuilding preps have looked in the assisted realm closer to what we had going on in the natural bodybuilding scene maybe like 10 years ago. You know, like we had a lot of like tools like fatigue management in natural bodybuilding for a while, like refeeding, diet breaks, deloads. And like, there's been a lot more of that that's kind of blended into assisted bodybuilding now, which I think is great. And obviously a lot more people are, you know, like I remember the first prep that Cuba did when we were training together, and that was like 2020. Yeah, I think it was like the COVID year, maybe 21. No, I think it was 2020. And his prep then was a hell of a lot shorter and a hell of a lot more aggressive than he's recently done. You know, his preps have kind of got longer and longer, and with more diet breaks and more fatigue management. I think a big influence for him there has arguably been John Jewett and people like that have been pushing more of that educational front on the assisted realm. But yeah, I think timelines are just different, but I think they are getting a little closer. There used to be bigger gaps in the timelines, but yeah, because I see like some athletes that, you know, if I was looking at them as a natural and I look at their prep like setup and I'm like, man, like how are they going to make it? And then they make it and they still look amazing. And they're like still full and round and have got great pop. And then I was like, I think like if I did that to a natural, they'd just look like so tired and deflated. And I mean, they might not even be able to do it. It might not even be feasibly possible to pull off that kind of transformation in that time scale. So I think it's like some of the timelines are just on turbo mode. If you get if you get my drift.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We create the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. Additionally, you get access to our exclusive Revive Stronger member site, where you'll be able to watch over hundreds of hours worth of educational content. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
Yeah, I often think about like performance enhancing drugs as they're kind of advancing, like they're fast forwarding a lot of the progress you can make now, but taking it away from later in life, as horrible as that sounds, because obviously there are downsides to taking PEDs for health and longevity. So I wonder if, and I imagine this is like some of the safer use models and things have become popular, I think, from like Joe Jeffries and the Physique Collective, broadening people's horizons there. And it's like, hey, we could do this a little slower and not have to use anywhere near as much gear. And ultimately that's good for like long-term success within the sport. So, and it's cool to see that, yeah, the enhanced side is starting to learn a little bit from some of the natural ways of doing things. Because I think in the past, it was very much the naturals would always just look towards the best of the best enhanced and be like, they would attempt a 10-week prep or whatever it might be. It's like, that doesn't quite work because, yeah, we don't have hormones being injected that can support various functions within the body. So, yeah, it's I think your assessment of just the timelines, it's like how fast can someone adapt in a training program? Man, when you're a natural, I often say muscle growth is like watching paint dry. As someone enhanced, it's like you got a blow dryer on that fucking thing and it dries a lot quicker. So, actually, I guess that's a question I'd be interested to ask you as well, because I know, like you said, Jordan, Cuba, you train in and amongst a lot of enhanced competitors. Is there anything, I mean, what's kept you natural? Has there ever, I imagine there has been that temptation to think, I could go enhanced, especially because for someone like you had success quite early on, I think, within your bodybuilding career, and clearly have like a good setup for it in that way.
Yeah, I mean, if I really think about it, I think I did have strong deliberation when I was a lot younger. And I think that was simply because I always tell this story. I went to my first natural bodybuilding show in 2014, competed in my first show, the BNBF Midlands. Still remember the venue to this day, everything about it, because it's so vivid in my mind. And I remember seeing, the men's open come on, and I was just like, you know what, like, I'd be super chuffed looking like that in the future. I'd be happy with that level of muscularity. And yes, it's not a freak show. And yeah, it's not like the most muscular person in the world by any means, but it's still a presentation of work ethic. And, if you watch any natural bodybuilding show, yeah, you're going to get some freaks now in the teens that look bigger than some of the men's open, which is just quite crazy. But still, if you watch a show and you watch through, as a judge, you watch through the teens, the juniors, the novice, then you get to the men's open, then you get to the overall, and it's like this, you get this almost inspirational journey as a spectator, because especially if you're a young lad in the audience or a young female, and you watch these transitions of classes, you realize that with hard work, with dedication, with time, you can build a physique potentially like a Ben Lloyd or like a Theo Golab or something that these guys have been doing this for years, So that for me was kind of the turning point where I thought to myself, I'm not fussed about that. And then if I'm honest with you, like, everything else has kind of fallen. Well, I say fallen, it's not fallen on a plate because I've obviously worked very hard for it, but I've kind of built my entire brand, business, and entire future off natural bodybuilding. And I kind of like owe it to the sport also to keep pushing it and keep driving my own career in natural bodybuilding, because I think without that, there would be a large magnet to all of my other business models that would go missing. So for me, I have zero any thought process. I mean, even if I am motivated by the people that I see in the gym and the size and the strength that they do have, I almost just see it as an opportunity, as like, how close can I get as a natural, I use it as a motivational tool, and I know many other people do as well, like, because yes, assistance plays a massive role in your ability to perform, but it's so does your mind. So if you make your mind, expose your mind to people doing stuff that is, not necessarily normal stuff in the gym, you can slowly creep your way closer and closer and closer to it. So, I think for me, it's been more of a motivational factor being around people like that, rather than I wish I was assisted kind of setup.
I appreciate that answer. And I think it comes back to something I think I've heard you say, and a lot of people I respect who do like natural bodybuilding, and probably more so the natural side, is like, I don't compete because I train. Like, wait, am I saying that the right way around? I'm trying to say it's like, I train and live the lifestyle, yes, and therefore I compete. I don't do the lifestyle to compete. Because we just love what we're doing. And so that's often the answer I come back to the same way, is like, I just love the process of taking care of myself with my sleep, with like the training hard, like seeing those depositing those pennies over time and seeing that pay off in the long run, nothing would change when I'm enhanced, apart from it would be quicker and there'd be a lot of complications that kind of stress me out. I'm definitely a risk averse person. So and I also said, like, environment for me, I said was a big thing because I've just never been surrounded by it. But I think I'd probably be similar to you in terms of just seeing it as inspo. Like, yes. I often get, because you can look at it with rose tinted spectacles. I have that whenever like Mike Israetel comes over for a seminar and I'm like, God, these guys are so huge and damn, maybe. And then I'm just like, nah, I just don't think it's the way I would like to go down. And yeah, obviously now you've built your business and you're well entrenched within natural bodybuilding, which is cool. So yeah, I've got a lot of time and respect for that answer.
Yeah. I think you're in a similar way as well. Like, I mean, whenever I think of you, I obviously think of your podcast and I think of all the information that you give out, but I also think of you as Steve, the natural bodybuilder. And, you know, I think when you've been in it for so long, you kind of, your name is attached to a thing, you know, and I think natural bodybuilding has been very good to us as well in a lot of ways. And I think that's another reason why, you know, it's like I personally want to just keep trying to make natural bodybuilding as big as possible, because not just because it's a linchpin for business or money or anything like that, but because it gives more people that like maybe are watching this podcast that, you know, 10 years ago were you know, or now are in our position that we were in like 10 years ago, where we were kind of getting momentum with this thing, you know, getting into competing, getting into sharing our process. And, you know, it's like, it's given us so many opportunities that now can be passed down to so many other people as well.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. On the front of training, actually, this is something I'd be interested to know is, when you look at your training career, what would you say like have been the big fundamental like mistakes that you feel like maybe you made that you've updated yourself on over the last like few years that you feel like have been a real change?
Sure. I think maybe attachment to certain exercises that probably didn't need to be doing and sent me down a path of, I mean, maybe just chasing something that I'm more emotionally attached to than gives me the physical benefits, you know? So for a long time, I was very, very attached to just driving up numbers on a barbell back squat, for example. You know, I had some, you know, even I think my last run was like 2022. And I just had this goal of doing 180 for 20. And I got it boxed off, but like, like the days leading up to it, the days after it, I was just not my normal self. Let's be honest. It's like the amount of just total trashery fatigue that caused me mentally and physically. I'll look back and I'll say now that it was worth it, but how I felt in the moment, I probably wouldn't want to go back and feel that kind of way. Like, I can do any level of madness on the hack or leg press or whatever, and I will not feel that trashed again, because there's a different whole level of fatigue, and it's not just physical, it's mental, because you're putting a bar on your back which you have to stabilize, and you know what it's like. You know, it's like, it's a completely different mind game. But I do think, looking back at that, and something that I kind of used to rationalize in my own head as to why I was doing it, was like, I was building the skill of becoming harder and mentally tougher so that I could attack so much other stuff and it becomes so easy. Like, for me, when I look at a hack squat, regardless of what I got to do, to me, I look at a hack squat, I'm like, this is so easy. Like, all I have to do is hold on and just go until my legs can't go. And yeah, I have to think about bracing, composure, all that kind of stuff. But like, it's just not anywhere near the level of a back squat. Whereas now, you know, maybe people that don't do those movements, they're looking at a hack squat and they've just got fear all over their face, you know, and with a movement that's very externally stabilized. So I think there was benefits of going down that path, but I probably just hung on to those things for perhaps a tiny bit too long, and I could have avoided some minor niggles that I had as a result of doing those things. So that, I also think I attached myself in previous preps to certain exercises that I just kept in the prep for too long. Like, I remember even in 21, there was a point where, you know, my RDL like just felt like just a complete and utter risk to be going into a stretch position with the amount of load I was trying to hold on to. And I've said to myself, this prep is like, once it gets to a point where it feels like my glutes and hamstrings are just holding on for dear life, just please do yourself a favor and just switch to like something a little bit safer, like a dumbbell, where you're not going to be an absolute idiot with the load. Because I've probably run the red line with getting probably a more serious injury. I want to touch wood and say that I've not had one, which I'm lucky about. But I've run the red line so many times where I look back and I get home from a session, I'm like, hey, you're such an idiot, man. Just do something just a little safer. But it's that embedded mindset to me that I'm just like kind of quite relentless with my approach. Some of it benefits me, but some of it I know at some point it's going to bite me in the ass, because I've seen it bite other people in the ass and I've seen it bite clients as well. And, that's where my kind of coaching head needs to come on and think, just do the right thing, not the hardcore mentality thing. So yeah, I think that's probably been one of the or two of the biggest things. And yeah, other than that, maybe just volume as well. Volume for me has been something that I've definitely since 2016, 2017, just constantly had very, very moderate. But before that, I was definitely of the mindset that more is better. And I again, for the listeners to learn something from the podcast, it's like, think of all of your working sets as opportunities. And if you're not looking at them as opportunities anymore, and you're looking at them as just doing work, and you're like, I've got to just get this next set done to hit my volume quota, it's likely you're just dragging your volume too high and your actual intensity of effort is dropping off, and your actual ability to give everything to those opportunities to grow or to hold muscle is coming down. So volume for me is something that I'm always tweaking in different phases to make sure that I always have that opportunistic mindset when I approach my working sets.
I love those reflections. I think a lot of the listeners will be able to relate to them. I certainly do, like getting attached to barbell lifts, especially squats. I think for both of us, I haven't run squats for the longest time now because they just didn't grow my quads. And like I said before, quads are something that I just can't afford not to be growing. Yep. So yeah, made that switch. And then, yeah, it's interesting. I think there's this, it kind of relates to your first kind of philosophy with training in terms of just that relentless work ethic, where I think it can really, really pay off, but at times it can hurt you. And I have that with prep where I'm like, people will switch out movements to like quote unquote fatigue management, but they're just making life easier. And I'm like, if it's mentally getting challenging to hold on to numbers, that's good because you're going to maintain that muscle. But there becomes a fine line, like you said, where you start changing your technique, it starts breaking down, and you're like, oh, my lower back has actually been feeling that more than my hamstrings for the last month. Maybe I should make a change. So yeah, it's that I battle with that element too. And then your final point on volume, man, yeah, it's the scientific literature and stuff is compelling. And I think particularly the way it's communicated is compelling, where it's like more is better if you can recover from it. But of course you can recover from it if your quality and standard and intensity is sandbagging. And I think about it, your analogy was brilliant. Look at, or example of like looking at every set as an opportunity. I often think about it, if you have a certain number of tasks to do in a day, if you have 20 and normally you can only really do 10, and you suddenly go, oh, I'm going to just try and do 20, they're going to be 20 half-assed efforts, and it's not going to be anywhere near as good as those 10 that you could get done. And I definitely made that mistake. Like my intensity was not where it needed to be when I just was like, yeah, I'll do 70 sets of back for the week. Like this is some absurd post-show, the back isn't good enough.
I think we've all been there though, like, but that's the important thing as a coach with and an athlete with kind of skin in the game, is that, you know, we are our own research study, you know, and we're actually our best research study as well, because we're the ones that feel all of the effects of trying to do what is being said to us as right, you know, and then we can say to clients, and we can also have the right tools in our toolbox to drag the best out of each individual that's in front of us, because we know we've got character X in front of us with certain traits and character Y with certain traits and certain abilities. And that's why, of course, we both look at training footage as one of our biggest metrics for deciding certain volume placements, exercise placements, etc., because that then tells us where we go with our tools. And yeah, I think it is quite challenging now to also keep clients away from being driven towards this very research-backed training program versus what is actually going to present the best progress for them on a plate.
Yeah, really well said. I often have to just tell people, especially because of the podcast that obviously this is, where I have a lot of PhDs, follow like evidence-based training, and like our clients also do that, and they see a new research paper and they're like, oh, I should be doing this. And I'm like, yeah, well, let's put it in the toolbox of what we already know and understand, not just of data as a whole, but also data of you.
Yes.
N equals 1. Like if you're growing really well from 10 sets of quad work a week, you don't need to jack it up to 52. I always use that example because that was the crazy study that came out. Yeah, absolutely wild stuff that happens. And the science or the papers that come out, they're trying to answer specific questions, not give us like the perfect protocol. But I think people want that kind of optimal, perfect protocol type of thing. Yeah. So yeah, I totally see that for you. And you mentioned putting your coaching hat on, and this is something that I thought would be interesting to ask is in terms of you being self-coached. I think maybe you had one prep where you had a coach, but for the majority of your bodybuilding career, you've been wholly self-coached, correct?
Yes, correct. So my first ever one that I did, 2014, I did have a coach, just a local guy that I also PT'd in the same studio as him. So and he was actually great, and he taught me a load of basic coaching principles that I now still apply to this day. But since then, yeah, I've kind of just taken my own preps. I think that there's an element of, and you all know this yourself when you've self-coached, it's like there's an element of wanting to be the own ruler of your kind of like end product, and wanting to take complete ownership in a wrong or right decision. I like that because I would feel like right now and it'd be interesting to hear how you felt with things like with Cliff being in your corner, but right now it's like I always feel like there would be a bit of, oh, but maybe I would do this, or oh, but maybe I would do that. And that's something that I always chat with Loz about it, and I say, would being coached actually be less stress for me, or would it be actually more stress? Because I've played around with that over literally the last 2 to 3 years, because I've thought, you know what, like I've got, luckily I'm competing in season A for the first portion of the season. So I've got limited clients in season A compared to season B. I've still got others competing and others, that I need to coach. So I have played around with it a lot in my head, and I've come to the conclusion that, yeah, for me right now, it's still the best option just to treat myself as a client, have people as second eyes, which I think is a hugely important thing when you're self-coaching, that you do still have people that you can bounce ideas off and bounce pictures off on a fairly frequent basis. And that's not just sending them to random people. That's, sending them to a select person or a couple of people to get 1 or 2 thoughts at pivotal points. And yeah, like I said, I think it's the kind of level of decision making that I'm at. I kind of also know like little things about my body that, if I'm honest, no coach, unless they coached me since 2014, would be able to know. It's like you know what it's like with yourself. It's like you can feel when it's weird, like you can feel when you're having a day when you're losing fat, and you can feel when you're having a day when you're going to wake up a bit watery, and you can feel when doing slightly less expenditure will actually be a good thing, and you'll wake up looking better for it. It's like all these little intuitions that either I would be the most annoying client in the world inundating a coach with these little things that they don't really care about, or I just handle those little things myself, and I'm able to piece them together in my own head. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but yeah, I kind of bounce the question back to you is like, how have you found things with Cliff? Have you found that, the decision-making processes have cleared your head? Have you used a certain psychological tool to get around that?
It's a great question because obviously us being coaches, we see the huge value in what a coach can provide, and our clients tell us, and we see the results with them. We also, like, you follow any sport, and the best of the best have coaches. So
yes.
it's always been something where I'm like, and I had a coach in 2014 and then not since. And I've had people in my corner that I can bounce ideas off. And that was always like my, like, hey, like I can do it myself because I have kind of coaches in a sense that I'm talking to give me insights. But I don't think my environment or the people I had in my corner have been as impactful as for you, because I think you're just surrounded in a tight-knit in like a group of individuals, which I think is part of it. And then also I wanted to see this year, just what if I get arguably the best coach for natural bodybuilding and see what he can do for me and see what I can learn. And I would say so far it's been like a huge help, but that's part in due because this year has probably been the most stressful and worst year of my life in many ways for reasons outside of bodybuilding, which is unfortunate, but it really helped having someone to just offload to and I could trust just completely. And I think I am a quite coachable individual. Cliff, we'll discuss things at the end of prep, because up until this point I was feeling very much that way. But it's interesting because the Netherlands went as well as it could have gone. And it was like a huge win. I was like, amazing. Swiss show, the result wasn't that great. The look, it's hard to necessarily know at this moment, but when it doesn't go quite well, then you start questioning yourself. Like, I don't question and doubt Cliff. Like, I know his skill and ability, absolutely. But then you start thinking, would I have done that differently? And so it's funny, leading into this final, into the Worlds, I am probably sending Cliff too many messages of like, what about this? I know you've planned this, but what do you think to this? So anyway, he's going to make a final call because he's my coach and I respect him unbelievably. But yeah, to like give you a full answer, definitely for the majority of this prep, it's been an amazing experience having him there. And I've learned things that are going to make me a better coach and athlete moving forward. But yeah, I won't be able to give a true answer, I don't think, until it's all settled and I can look back and reflect. Because yeah, like you said, there are things you know about your body that... And when you do have a coach, sometimes I think it is tempting to offload it to the point of which you're not as involved in the process, which has been really nice. But sometimes I think maybe I should have been looking at more of these things or what have you. And you have your ways of doing things, of course, which Cliff works quite a bit differently to me, which has been really insightful. But also there's some things that I like.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing that I'd struggle with is I'm kind of like a bit of a probably 100% or nothing kind of mindset with the whole coaching thing. So I think if I was coached, I'd be probably quite similar to how you were for the majority of the prep, where you take the feedback and just do it. That's it. Just do it. Give the bare minimum feedback that you need to give him to give him his decision making processes, and then crack on, because that as a coach is often what I like, because I feel like I'm really in the driving seat and I can really have clarity with my decisions. When there's a lot of back and forth, I sometimes like it as a coach, but often it gets my brain thinking too much, because my brain works really well when I'm quite actionable and I'm like, let's go. And when I start to have noise, too much of it, I'm thinking, like an hour after, I'm like, you know what? Like, So it starts to get me thinking a bit more, which doesn't always result in the best outcomes, you know? So sometimes it does. Sometimes that back and forthness does work. And I've had several different situations like that this year. A little bit recently with Ben at the Olympia, we were going back and forth a little bit more and we nailed it as a result of that. But there's been other situations where some of the best looks have been formed off pictures. Tell me what to do. Off we go. And those are often the most enjoyable ones as a coach, because you feel like it's your decisions that have brought that look. So yeah, I think that's something I'd struggle with. But it's great to hear your insight, and I think, you know, definitely from a psychological standpoint, a coach can play such a huge role. You know, especially if an athlete, obviously like yourself, you know, a much tougher year, having someone to really lean on a little bit and also have that direction into the next week. And you look forward to chatting to that person, even if it is, via email, via text. It's like, it's something to look forward to in your week. And also I think maybe for you, you'll probably agree, is like Cliff's probably a point of authority for you in a way. So you probably kind of want to impress him in a way with like your progress. And I think there's something to be massively said in that, because my training in like the 2020 prep, when I had every session with Cuba, was like ridiculous, because I always wanted to like impress him. I always wanted to like turn up and send it, and it's even now when I train with Loz, like, I want to lead by example. And that's not because I put up a phone and film my sets. It's nothing to do with that. It's because of the person that is there with you. So I think having someone that you have a little bit of an authoritative figure with, and someone you look up to, is it does really play a positive role.
Such a great point there, actually, because it's very true. And actually, I found myself using and emulating that with my own clients, where I've started to take more of an authoritative role with them, because I have seen the benefit of me doing that with Cliff. Not that Cliff's been like authoritative, but I've viewed that relationship like that. I'm like, I like that. I think my clients will like that. I should take that role a little bit more. So for sure, it drives people in the right direction. We haven't got much time, AJ, but I'd be remiss to not ask these two questions.
Sure.
So one is, so you're competing next year. I thought you maybe weren't, because you're doing a really exciting thing with Natural Bodybuilding Worldwide, and you're doing kind of your first show. So yeah, I'll give you some time to talk about both those things.
Of course. So yeah, I've kind of mapped out my year quite strategically in the news of that. This is something that I've known for, luckily, a long time, because there's a lot of work that goes into it. So there's been already about 12 months worth of work to get to this point where it's been announced. So as for my own contest prep, yes, I'll be competing 2 primary shows for sure at the moment. Whether or not I do any others would kind of just depend as to where I'm at with things. But 2 shows where I really want to, be my best is the show in the UK, which will be the UKDFBA show in the Ben Hall on the 25th of May, which will also act as like a INBA, PNBA Worlds qualifier. And then I'll go through hopefully to the World Championships, compete there, and that's in Spain, and that's in the middle of June. So my contest prep will be finished in June. So I'm 2 weeks into it right now. So I believe this weekend marks 27 weeks out. So a little different timeline to the 2021 prep. 2021 prep was 25 weeks, and I started at 204 pounds and got down to 152.
This is another topic I was going to go into. We'll do it another time.
Yeah, sorry, man. We can do that a different time. And right now I'm 27 weeks out at 176 pounds this morning. So super steady. I'm not in my head envisioning that I'm going to be heavier on stage. I'm not envisioning any scale weight. I've set my timeline to be matched in scale weight as I was on stage in 2021 at 2 to 3 weeks out. So and that's also with a lot of the time period, the last like 7 to 8 weeks being at like half a pound rate of loss, and never any point where I'm going over 1%. So it's going to be very different. I mean, I'm already feeling way better than I should on paper for the body weight and the condition. And I'm happy with how I'm looking. The improvements that I made are mainly in, I'd say, just muscle maturity. Everything just looks a little harder for the body weight, I guess. And I'd like to say that the arms and chest are a little bigger. So I'm looking forward to presenting that. And the main thing is I just want to execute a prep at the level that I'm able to prep other people, because I haven't done that with myself yet, where, I think my methodologies have changed a lot since 21, and I've learned a lot about, contest prep positioning and how things should look at certain points. And yeah, I'm just pumped to execute that myself and not feel like I'm just having to wring myself through fat loss the whole process. So that'll be fun. And then after that, obviously in October, it just got announced that I will be promoting with MBW the first MBW International show, which I'm just so excited for. I could chat for days about it, but I think the brief synopsis is that it will be an international contest, where if you're from the overseas, you can just come and compete as an amateur or a pro. You can hold any pro card. So you as a WNBF pro could come in. Someone else as a INBA, PNBA pro could come in and compete in the same stage. So similar to what they have done at the ANBF. And then there, of course, will be a whole amateur show as well alongside that, which will feature UK athletes that have come through the UK DFBA, and overseas athletes that, you know, can be from wherever they want. If they've not even competed before, they could come and do the show. So yeah, it'll be held 20 minutes away from my house in a place called Magna, a huge hall arena. There will be some booths at the back for sponsors. We'll be having some really cool stuff happening with that show. So there's a lot planned. There's a lot of excitement. It's a lot of nerves. My end, I'm going to be honest with you, mate. There's a lot of nights where I go to bed and I've got 4 or 5 things whirring around in my brain that I'm thinking about that I want to do. And I've got to a point in coaching where I can silence my brain in the evenings. But with this, I'm struggling a little bit already with the amount of things that I'm looking forward to and I'm excited about. But you know what? I feel like I've got another level of I'm revived, you know, in a way with this next goal, because coaching for me is not by any means boring. That's not what I'm saying at all. I love coaching. I'll always coach, and my primary job is to be and will be coaching. Even at this show, I'll have a load of clients in it. But it's been something that I've done every single day for 10 years. Wake up and just think about just how can I be the best coach? So now that I've also got, how can I also promote a show really well and create a stamp on natural bodybuilding that's even bigger than just being a coach? I've got a whole another rocket in my rocket ship, you know, if that makes sense. So I feel really just excited and motivated about it. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. And obviously it'd be a pleasure to have anyone that's listening, either a spectator, a competitor, and, you know, if anyone's interested in supporting the show in any other shape or form, obviously feel free to reach out. And, you know, we're taking opportunities for people to be a part of it in terms of sponsorship and collaboration, things like that, because we think it's a really great opportunity to, you know, stamp a business or a brand's name behind natural bodybuilding, because that's what we're trying to all be about, is giving more opportunities to natural bodybuilders. And there is more opportunity than ever, you know, like there's so many federations doing an amazing job right now. And I commented this on one of the posts that went up like the other day. It's like, there was a post saying, who will be the natural bodybuilding leader in 2025? And I just said, like, why does there need to be a competition? You know, like, for me, I just want everyone to succeed. Like earlier in the year, I had a great chat with Steph and we communicated about our plans, show dates, what we're wanting to do, because we just both care about each other succeeding, you know? It's like, and for a long time, there's been, I don't want to say a battle, but there's been this like art of like supremacy between federations. And it's like, why don't we all just work together? We've got something amazing here, something great, where if we all just work together and help each other out, we can all have something amazing, you know? And the piece of the natural bodybuilding pie is bigger and better than ever. So yeah, it should be awesome. And yeah, thank you for letting me have a chance to speak about it for a bit.
No, of course. And again, there might be an opportunity to talk when you're deeper into prep about, pushing body weights up and contest prep timelines, how your prep's going, and then talk about the show a little bit more, help promote it that little bit more, because that is part of what this podcast is about, is just elevating natural bodybuilding. What's the saying? Like, a rising tide raises all ships. And that's exactly how I feel with natural bodybuilding. And the way I like to see the landscape is that it's like, hey, natural bodybuilding, it's small enough. We're struggling enough against the enhanced side. Like, let's not fight amongst one another. Let's try and elevate everyone. And that's why I've not aligned myself, but I really resonate with the WNBF and with Steph in particular and what she's doing with them, because she speaks just the same passion as you do about the sport as a whole. And yeah, it doesn't have any kind of like, I don't know, grudges against people competing in various federations and what have you. So
Exactly.
I love that you're bringing a fresh take to it as well, because I think there are some things that could be massively improved on show days to make them to make the experience more enjoyable for everyone, from athletes to spectators. And with the number of shows you go to and have been part of, I know you'll be bringing that improvement to that too. So yeah, I'd love to be at that show and have various clients there too, hopefully, because it sounds like it's going to be a fun time, and following your prep is going to be enjoyable too. And I guess that leads me to like, where can people follow your prep, follow along with yourself, and get more insights into natural bodybuilding worldwide?
Sure. So I think the best place for people to follow along, especially if they like watching training, is probably just my Instagram. AJ Morris _ is my Instagram. You can scroll through as much as you wish. There's a bunch of different things on there, most of it training, but some insights into clients, informative reels and things like that we put through MBW. If you are interested in following more from MBW and what we do, so it's a membership platform. So we have an option to pay monthly or annually, and you can expect different courses on there from an educational standpoint. So to help you through off seasons, contest preps, etc. And also an interactive forum to ask questions, things like that. And then we have numerous athletes on the site, the high level athletes across both male and female categories, where you can just follow their process, get an insight into what they're doing, how their workouts look, what phase they're in, ask them a couple of questions. You can obviously ask any other question that's irrelevant to those people's processes as well, and just generally learn. We've had some amazing feedback over the last few years. We've been running it since 2022, and some of the most notable things is I've had people come up to me at shows and say that they prepped themselves for the show and did really well just off the courses or just off asking questions on the site. And then even more so, coaches coming up and saying, look, like, I prepped this client because of this course, or I prepped this client from asking a few questions in the forum. And that's the kind of impact that I wanted to have with it, is that I realized a while ago, I can't help everyone. I can't accept everyone as a client because my roster would be too extensive, or I'd not have enough time to help that many people. So my option was create something where I can help people in a kind of a broader scheme. So that's what MBW is. And yeah, you can check it out at naturalbbworldwide.com.
Amazing. I'll make sure your Instagram is linked below, and also that website, so people can go check all of that out. I think there'll be a lot of people who are interested in that. Thank you again for your time, and thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Appreciate it, guys.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality, and we know how to do it, and we will help you achieve this. The Minicut movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.